Well, hello and welcome to the channel. My name's Johnny and you're watching Hillbilly Modeling. This is going to be part 3 of our M60A3 with the M9 Bulldozer by TAKOM in 1/35th scale. So we're going to pick up where we left off. I think we left off fooling with our fenders. So let's jump down to the bench and see if we can't get those fenders on. So we'll take a quick look at our instructions here. Now this is step 13 where we install our fenders and those little guards that, mud guards that are at the rear of the fenders. And we didn't have a problem with the left-hand side, but when it came to the right-hand side, it didn't really snap in flush like the opposite side did. Kind of bows out just a little bit. And as I look, I can't really see anything that's really holding it off. So I suspect it's probably just the that little bit of bowed out portion there where we had so much trouble when we drew it in, right along the back engine deck side there. So I believe the best thing to do, we'll just start at the engine deck and start just gluing this in, and we're just going to draw it in because it's a very, very small amount, and there's nothing really to remove. So the first thing we need to do is go ahead and glue up these little mud guards that are on these rear corners here, and there is a left and a right, so we do have to be careful which one we choose. Now the one for the left-hand fender is a very specific part for this model tank since it has the hydraulics. So there's going to be a part in the kit that we're not going to use. And they simply slot into place and with a little bit of to me extra thin, get those glued up. And we're going to go ahead and start with our troublesome fender first. So we just kind of snap it into place here, making sure that everything lines up. And it does. It lines up very well. And we'll go ahead and start right here on the rear section. Now this is just adjacent to the engine compartment. And we're going to want to glue that up and let that set up nice and solid for us. That way it won't pull away from the hull when we slightly pull it in. And you can see here it's not very much movement to get it to go into place. So we're just going to kind of bow it into place there, and it doesn't appear to have a bow in it once we get it glued up. So I think we're going to be fine with it. Now we might need a little bit of filler at that forward brace, but we'll worry about that later. So for now, we just want to make sure that everything has plenty of time to set up, and then we'll go ahead and glue the fender on the opposite side. Now when it comes to that opposite side, we do have hydraulic lines that come down from that tank, and I think it's a filter element there on the rear fender. So we'll have to put those into place. And they do fit pretty good. Just a word of caution, there is a little bit of a egg shape there to the pipe, and it needs to be sanded down so it'll fit into the fitting there on the lower hull. So we do have another box here that I think it's a communications box, has the phone in it for the infantry to use. And we'll go ahead and put that together. And it doesn't present us any issues. Just simply almost snap it together there. And alignment is very good on that. Now when it comes to putting it on the fender, there are two little bitty holes down there inside the fender. There's a lower bracket on our mount where it needs to sit. And that's about all the location that there is for this part. And then there are braces that go up to the side of the engine deck there. So we'll just go ahead and put a little bit of me extra thin on the lower portion of it, and then just rock it down into place. And then we can go ahead and cement those brackets to the side of the hull. That looks pretty good. So we'll move on to step 14, which is our these brackets and guards that protect our headlight assemblies. Now we have left those headlights off until now, so we're going to go ahead and take care of that. And then we got these other little parts that we need to install onto the front portion of the upper hull. And as you can see, I do keep everything separated and ready to go. These little brackets are very fidgety. They're quite tedious to put together. They do have a very positive overlapping joint, so just make sure that these parts are fully seated, and it's not a problem. Now, it's very important, though, that we keep comparing our assembly to the instructions, so that we're not building it up backwards. Because you can get that upper guard, the loop that goes around the headlight, on backwards, and that is probably not a good look. So, by comparing it, every time we put a part onto this, we can try to eliminate putting things together backwards and having to remove it later. So that's how it's supposed to look. So I think that I've done it correctly. So we do have a left and a right, and they are a mirror image of one another. So we have to be careful when we go to assemble the other side that we are putting the brackets on the right side of that guard. So when it comes time to put them on, it does attach to that very front fender bracket, and that's where we're going to start to cement it. Because once we get that down nice and flush, the other side should just line up for us. And it does. So a little bit to be extra thin there. And just making sure that everything's fully seated. And then we can go ahead and cement the one on the opposite side. So next, we do have the headlights that we left off. And I left them off because, number one, I didn't want to tear them off while we were joining those whole sections together. Also, with the guards as a reference, we can make sure that we get our headlights as straight and even as possible. So those look really well. On to the next. So there's a very small bracket, and I think that this is the hatch stop. Not positive on that, but it doesn't really connect to anything, so I think it's supposed to support the hatch once the hatch is fully open, because it slides over to the side. So we'll put that in place, and then we have this pipe, and it'll only go on one way, so that's great, and we'll just have to cement that into place. Now, the brackets that we're cementing right now, those go right up next to the fender support. So that was step 14. Now we're going to move on to 15 and start working on all of our hydraulic lines here. So we have guards, and we have the pipe ends, and then, of course, we got those brackets that attach it to the bottom of the hull of the vehicle. So I think probably the best thing to do is start off with our pipe connectors, and these are half moon peg and hole kind of arrangement, and as you can see, they're just a little bit oversized on the hoses that go into it. So we're just going to file those down a little bit, and it's from the molding process. I think they're just a little bit egg shaped, so it doesn't take very much to get them to fit very well. So just a little bit of light sanding, and then these parts will just slide right into place. Now we're going to want to make sure that this is fully seated. We can't afford to have too much offset here. make sure that they're straight as to relationship to that little bend there at the end of the hoses, because those little brackets, they actually fit right up against the hull. And then, of course, we got our coupler, and that little coupler just cements straight onto the end there. And that's what we have. So next up, we have these brackets that we need to install. And again, pay attention to your instructions so that you're not putting these brackets on upside down. There is another way to do it. You can install the brackets straight onto the vehicle first and then attach the brackets to the lines. I kind of chose to go the opposite direction here because I want those, the top, well, it's actually the very bottom, but we want that clamp to have a great alignment there. And if we align these and set them completely into the slots that they're supposed to go into, everything lines up perfectly. So we do need to fit the other pipes that goes up to that fender bracket that we put in the previous video. And again, just a little bit of light sanding here to make sure that the ends of these lines go up into the fittings that are on not only our lower lines but also into that bracket. There's a square notch and a half moon notch. So with our pipes fitted, we can go ahead and install our hoses. And it's very positive. It just, each one of those brackets set over the mounting bolts for our road wheel arm housings there. And a little bit of to me extra thin will make sure that each one of them is attached to the hull. And we'll just move right on down the line, and it goes together very well. It's well engineered, and we don't have any issues with this. Now when it comes to these little bitty brackets that set flush to the rear hull there, we're going to leave those loose for the moment to make sure that we've got a little bit of extra playroom there so that we can get our lines installed. So next up, we've got this front guard to put on. Now you can put this on backwards, which I did the first time, and then I had to pull it back apart. The instructions have you attach these to the lines and then put that all of it on as an assembly, or at least that's the way it looks to me. But I feel that the best way to do it is to leave these separate. That way we can kind of fit them. Now, I did kind of forget and overlook a little sprue gate there, which I needed to take off, which sometimes that happens, especially with as many little attachment points that these guards have. And we do have one little stud there that's a little long. I'm not sure if there was maybe another hole that we were supposed to drill into the lower hole or not, but I just trimmed it off so it sets nice and flush on the lower hole. And then we just cement that up. And it fits right into the previous drilled holes, no problem. And now we can go ahead and attach these small pipe sections here that goes up to the little bitty bracket on the underside of our fender. And as we attach these and get them into place, we can not only cement the line, but we can also go up and cement that bracket too and make sure that it's flush against the hull. And then it's a simple matter of attaching the opposite line. And it just slots right into place. Now this one is almost too short, but it does touch, so we're just going to put it into place, and it's not an issue. Everything connects up and it looks right, so we're going to go with it there. So the fit here is absolutely outstanding because everything actually goes together just fine. So next up, we're moving on to step 16. So we've got this box that we need to build up that goes right onto the front lower hull. And I kind of don't have all of that video. That's just 3 parts attached there. The manifold and the top cover of the box. Next up, we do have these side plates. Now these are the mounting plates, and There's also some guards that attach to it, so we need to make sure we get these right, because you can accidentally glue them to the wrong side of that box, and you don't want to do that. So always compare it to the diagram to make sure that you're getting it on the correct side, because there is a top and bottom of this box. And we simply cement these into place. And we do have a cover plate that goes on that little manifold section there. And it just simply slots in. Just want to make sure that everything is square and looks correct. So with that box, we can attach it, and then we can worry about this other little manifold and this pipe that goes on. So we will put that, I think probably the best approach is to put this this line into that little box, whatever it's for, I don't know. But it's a good rectangular joint. So as long as the engineering of the kit is good, then the alignment should be perfect. And it just slots into place. And it's kind of ready to go here. So we'll let that set up just a little bit while we put the that main manifold box into place. Now it does slot into the holes that we previously drilled in the first video there, in the lower hull. And it is a snug fit, so just simply press it into place and make sure that those side brackets are fully engaged there. And we'll cement that. And then, of course, this little manifold goes into place. So I think probably the best thing to do, other than to keep dropping it, we're going to have to kind of hold it into place here. And if the fit is good, so with the fit check done, we can cement it. So I'll start off by putting just a little bit of TACOM extra thin there to kind of tack it into place for us. And there it is. And it looks really good. So these are all the parts that we've got on so far. Our fenders and hydraulic lines and brackets and that front control manifold, and yeah, looks very industrial. I really like that look. So that finishes off our step 16. So with 16 done, we'll go ahead and move on to the next step, which of course is 17. And my book is kind of, the staples doesn't want it to fold over nice and neat. But anyway, we have our hydraulic cylinders and brackets. There is a left and a right. We have to make up 2 of the cylinders first, and then we will build the left and rights separately. So it's important that we stay organized when it comes to building that. So we'll begin by making the 2 cylinders first. So we have the mounting bracket with the swivel pins on it there. And then there is a long tube attached to the cylinder there, and it just slots into place. And it is a very snug fit, and we can just cement that. Now when it comes to this bottom plate of our cylinder, there are 2 long tabs. One is shorter than the other, so you can't get this plate backwards. So don't be cutting any plastic off trying to make it fit the wrong way. And then we can just go ahead and cement that into place. So with those 2 made up, we can start working on the mounting for it. And it's supposed to sit right in those little pivot points. And I don't want TACOM extra thin to go everywhere, so I'm going to use a little bit of CA glue for the clamps that hold those pivot pins. We're just going to put a little bit of CA glue right onto those contact areas where the kind of bolt-on brackets go. Now these are very small, so we have to be careful with our placement of them and be quick too, because the CA glue is going to set up pretty quick with it. And you can't get those little brackets backwards. They're identical, so it's not a big issue. The only issue is to make sure that we get it on and get it seated, because we still need movement in this. Now, the instructions doesn't tell us to not cement those pins, so that's kind of important that you pay attention to it. Anything that looks like a moving joint, they're not very good in the instructions to say that you don't cement that. So it does still need to be able to move. So we're going to put the lower portion of the bracket on and make sure it's flush on the back side there. And that looks pretty good. Next up, we have some covers that protect our cylinder. So for the back side, it just has two little tabs, one to the left and one to the right, that slide down into slots onto the bracket. And then we can put a little bit of Tamiya Extra Thin there. And that'll help hold that bracket right into place. Just being real careful to stay away from that pivot point. We don't want to glue our cylinder up. We still need that cylinder to move back and forth. Now for the front cover, there are two little bitty pins, and then there are two holes on the mounting framework there for the cylinder. So all we got to do is line those up, and with them lined up, we can just cement that into place. Now with that done, we want to go ahead and check and make sure that we haven't accidentally cemented those pivot points, because that cylinder does need to move a little bit. It doesn't move a lot on the actual vehicle, but we just want to make sure that it does move. So with that done, we have a small bracket and a linkage that is we need to put together. There is a little, it's the same type of mounting bracket that held our cylinders into place. And we just need to put a little, I'm using Tamiya Extra Thin this time because I want this to really melt together. But we need to make sure that the joint stays loose and that we're still able to bend this linkage back and forth. So as that little clamp sets up with the cement, we're just going to work our joint back and forth there, and that'll make sure that it stays free and it doesn't attach itself to the bracket. So next up, we're going to cement the main cylinder bracket to the mounting plate that goes onto the front hull, and that fits perfectly. No issues with that whatsoever, and it's a wonderful, wonderful alignment, so we don't have any issues there. Now it's time to put this little bracket on that we had just assembled, and I didn't test fit it. I just assumed that it was going to fit like the other bracket did, and the way it's keyed, you would think that it would just go straight on, and it really doesn't. It just doesn't fit. So we're going to have to do a little bit of trimming there to get that to fit. So I should have test fitted it before I put the cement on there, and you know that's what happens when you don't obey your own rules. So all we really need to do is kind of nip off the large bulbous part of that locator, and then the bracket sits right into place like it's supposed to. So I imagine that was probably something that they neglected to take care of in the plans for the molds. Just want to make sure that everything is attached correctly, and that bracket has to sit nice and flush. So we go check everything, make sure everything moves correctly. So the opposite side is a mirror image of this one, and we'll go ahead and build that one up too. So once those are built up, it's time to actually mount these to the front hull. And they have a small locator pin and then a large tab. There's the large tab, and you can see the pin. The pin fits in a hole that we previously drilled in our first video, so it's very important that we line that pin up and then allow it to kind of drop in to the slot on the front hull. That slot would normally be where the toe point is for the vehicle, but in this particular case, it's going to hold this cylinder bracket. And then we just need to cement that into place. And of course, the one on the opposite side attaches the exact same way, so it's not a problem. And we're just going to check again, make sure everything still moves. And it does, so we're in really good shape here. So with that done, we can move on to step 18. Now, step 18 has brackets and the upper control arms that keep the correct angle for our blade. And we got a lot of little bitty small parts and some shields that need to go into place as well. So we'll go ahead and build those up. Now they are mirror images of each other, so we need to be careful how we're going to take and assemble these. Now I've cleaned all the parts up and kept them separated. And those are our shields and linkages and stuff. And there's also some latches that hold them into place. And the ideal is once we get this thing assembled, we'll be able to use those latches to freely either lock the blade up or allow it to go in its full down position. So there is a little bracket that goes on the back of that control arm where the lock actually latches it. So we're going to cement that into place first. And on the mounting bracket, there is a small kind of Z-shaped bracket that needs to be cemented onto it. Now this bracket's very important because it maintains the spacing between those cylinder brackets and these brackets. So we need to make sure that we get that into place. And then all we got to do is pop this together. That actual joint is split so that you can just pop it over into its locator hole. And as you can see, our lock actually, or the bracket for our lock swings up to it. So keeping those put aside once we assemble both of them, and remember we need to remember which one's left and which one's right. We do have our locks and linkage there that goes in between them. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and glue one into place first, one bracket, and then we'll slide the locks together and then put the second bracket on. Trying to keep everything together and everything moving for us. And it's really tedious, but as you can see, once you put it together, it works just fine. There's no way you could have seen how I was putting that linkage together because my fingers were all in the way. And I'm really hesitant to use tweezers with those little bitty latches. We'd have lost those. All right, so with that linkage and the locks in place, and they do work, next up is these covers. So I start by setting the covers into place, and come to find out, there is bolt detail on the side brackets of the central box there that the covers they just won't snap down over top of. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it, and I'm going to notch it for so that it'll actually be able to clear and slide down around those bolt details. So that's the first little issue that we got with these covers. They don't really fit particularly well. And then also when it comes to that little spacer bracket, it's not notched quite well for that. So we have to notch that out. Now once we get that taken care of and get both of them fitted, we can cement them into place. And then there is a small retainer bracket that goes to either side, a left and a right. And so we're putting this one on, and it just lines up into that little notch there on the cover. So we've got those covers on with a little bit of modifications. So step 19 is our lower control arms, and they also hold the ram that goes into the cylinders, and then they just snap on, as you can see there, to that bottom mounting point there on the first brackets that we put on. So we need to make those up, and this is the first time it says not to glue something. So moving on, we will start off by fitting the cylinder ram to our lower control arm. So it's supposed to pivot, and it's kind of tight. It's real tight. It doesn't want to seat in there. So we're going to have to take and make that a little bit wider. So I decided to use my file here, and we are just going to go in there and just widen that just a little bit. It doesn't take very much, just a couple of passes, and then the ram will fit right into place. Now make sure that our orientation is correct, because we don't want to put the ram in upside down. So pay attention to your instructions here, because once we glue this bracket up, that will be a problem. And of course the top section, or this is actually the bottom section of the control arm, we need to widen that gap for the ram connection point there too. That way it all snaps together correctly, and we'll be able to just put a little bit of Tamiya extra thin here on the outside of that framework, and we don't have to worry about it attacking or attaching itself to that ram. And as with all things, after you glue it up, make sure that that ram is still movable. And then we can go ahead and put our end brackets on that are going to attach to the dozer blade. And these are the exact same part for left and right. But now when it comes to the two center ones that face each other, they are different numbers. So I left those on the sprue section here that has the numbers on it, so that we would be able to identify them. And we're just going to clean them up and attach them one at a time, making sure that we got the correct one to the correct side. The only difference between the two in reality is that there's an anti-rotation block molded into it. So if you actually get these reversed, it's not going to matter. I don't think anybody's ever going to see it and know that that little block is on the top or bottom versus where it should be. So next we're going to go ahead and install these. So our ram is going to fit right into the cylinder there, and then we simply snap the control arm onto that mount, and just make sure it's seated properly, and it should work for us. And there we go. Very nice. So we just snap the other one into place too, and it goes on the same way. And these parts are supposed to remain loose. We should be able to move these, and if we can, we've done a good job there. And a final check here, make sure that our lock works. So very nice. Next up, we're going to work on the blade itself. So that's step 20, and we've got a lot of little parts that needs to go on here. So we're going to start off with the end section, I believe. I think the best thing to do is just kind of tack it into place first and check its alignment. And as you can see, it has these very positive indicators there for the location. And then we'll just run some more Tamiya extra thin down on the inside. Make sure that we've got plenty holding it on. And then next up, we'll put this bottom edge on. So we're going to cement it first to that end piece, and then we can just go along the bottom and add some more cement there. And then we have our other end piece to put on, and it'll just fit right into place. And now we can start attaching these attachment points for the lower control arms.
and they just have a rectangular slot that they fit into, and just simply cement those in. Now, it is my hope that we can leave the blade off for painting, because there is a whole lot on the front of the vehicle here. So I believe that, I hope anyway, that there's going to be just enough movement after everything has set up to allow us to do that. So for the face of the blade, we need to make sure that we close those gaps along the top. So we'll start on one end and cement that up. And then all we got to do is go along the top and just press it together and make sure that we don't leave any gaps there. Now with that in place, we have our wear edge that goes along the bottom of the blade. And same thing, nice fit. Run a little bit of to me extra thin along it there. And then it does want to pull away from those little tabs on the bottom. So we'll just go ahead and cement each one of those, because that should be a contact point, a nice solid weld. Those would have been welded together. And now we have some lifting eyes that goes on to the top of the blade. And I just want to make sure that they are aligned with one another so that it's not distracting when you look at them. And then we have some what appears to be little grab handles. It's probably a tie point for something. I have left the sprue gate on it because these parts are so small. Once we get them attached and the cement has set up, we can come back in, simply cut those off, and then sand them down so that we don't have to worry about losing them. If you try to dress these parts, they're so small, you're either going to break them or lose them. Losing them, and surprisingly, we haven't lost any yet. So this method has worked out really well for me, and if you don't normally do this, you might want to give it a try. It can help you kind of starve out that carpet monster a little bit there. So next up, we have the actual latch arm, and then all these little connection points here for the upper control arms, and they all have a different number. Now there's that latch that we're talking about, that the driver unlocks the blade from the travel position. So I think we'll start with that latch arm there. There is a hole that we drilled in the upper hull section there in one of the previous videos, and now we're just going to connect that. Now, something I didn't mention earlier, the actual locks are not glued to that control rod so that they still move. So next up, we're going to attach these connection points here, and I have left the numbered sprue section on each one of them, and we're just going to cut them off and trim them up one at a time. And just a couple of passes there with a sanding stick to take care of that sprue gate. And we are going to install these as we get to them. So we'll just clean them up, put them on, and make sure that they're square to that edge. And we just move right down the line. That way we don't get any of them out of sequence, because it is very important that they actually engage all of those linkages. So here I just have it set into place so we can get a good idea of what it looks like. And I do hope that we're able to put this blade into place and not have anything break off after painting, because it would be a nightmare to try to paint this thing with that blade attached.
All right, so that will wrap up part 3. We managed to get a lot done on this kit. Not only did we get our fenders on, but we've got all those hydraulic lines and all of that hydraulic stuff up here with the mounts and the cylinders and the guards and the shields and a lot of little parts. But we got it all on. Looks pretty good. And we also built up our blade. So we have our blade assembly. And that's all done, along with all those little attachment points. Now, the idea is that we'll be able to pop in all of those linkages, the parallel arms and what have you, into, hopefully, into and onto all these little brackets. So, well, I guess we'll see how that works out, but I really can't see how we can paint it with this on. It's going to be hard enough as it is with all that other stuff attached, but we'll have to worry about that when we get to it. So it kind of looks like in part 4, our next video, we're going to start working on the turret. So that should be a lot of fun. I really enjoy it when it comes time to put the turrets together. So special thanks to all my subscribers. It's because of you guys that I keep making these videos, and I hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you did, don't forget to give a like. Also, if you're new to the channel and you're not a subscriber, I hope that I earned your subscription. So, until next video, you guys stay safe.